found myself quite annoyed, actually, at the way that United and Aer Lingus have managed or not managed this relationship between their flights, you know, who runs them and who operates them. United runs them and Aer Lingus operates them, and it's a stupid system. It needs to be one or the other. So when I went up to board just before, when I was called up to the desk, and I reckon they were calling a couple of people, and I reckon they were all the people who had been on the Aer Lingus flight before and were now, which was supposedly also United, and were now moving to United only and not Aer Lingus, which was leaving at exactly the same time from the same terminal but a gate at the opposite end of the corridor, going to the same place, same time, but run solely by Aer Lingus. So, you know, presumably when I arrived, so did another plane from exactly the same airport operated by Aer Lingus. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And of course, because I had got onto the Aer Lingus flight to Dublin, they had issued me with boarding passes for both parts. And the boarding pass for the Aer Lingus part of the journey was not good for the United, and that was the issue. So United basically had to issue me a second boarding pass for the second half of the journey out. Even just recalling all this to you, it's exhausting. I had been awake by this time 25 hours, okay? I had been travelling for 12 hours, more or less, including, you know, all the bits to Leeds and then Leeds to Manchester and then the flight over. So I think we left at about 12:55, something like that. So I had been awake for 25 hours at the time I was boarding the flight to Newark from Dublin. And this little Chinese man who was speaking with an Irish accent, and I couldn't understand a word he was saying, and he was going on about where are you staying, and he wanted the address, and he wanted to fill it all in on this computer thing so that he could print out a boarding pass for me, and he couldn't find the address, and he couldn't find the hotel, and that should have rung alarm bells with me thinking about it. That should have rung alarm bells, because he had to type in manually the address of the hotel, because he was scrolling through the options of nearby hotels to Newark, and it was not coming up. And that's because it's a shitty hotel, basically. And I doubt many people stay here at all that are not sort of truckers or long distance, you know, lorry drivers, which are literally just staying overnight. Anywho, then it was time to actually go, and I found myself squidged again. This generally tends to happen, is that they do chock-a-block these flights. I was sat next to Larry. Larry was, I think, a European. He was speaking some kind of foreign language to a couple that was sat behind us. I had the window seat. Larry was next to me, and then there was some other guy who was American on the end, and he was going home. And we got on, and it was a little bit of a tight squeeze. It wasn't too bad. But I hadn't realised that instead of being a 5-hour journey, it was going to be a 7-hour journey from that point, because they said headwinds over New York. We can't do this. We have to actually go, usually they go over Iceland to Newfoundland and then down. And this guy and the pilot was saying, we're going to have to go all the way up to Greenland and then down sort of through Canada to avoid these headwinds. So that added another 2 hours to the journey. In fact, he said at one point that we were very lucky to have made it without having to stop and refuel someplace, and that would have been an absolute nightmare. So we got on, and the first thing they did was do all the food. So they come round with a drink, and then they come round with a snack, and then they do dinner, which was fabulous. This was very good airline food, and then they come around with another drink, and then after that it's all just sort of bottled water that they're giving, and all of this is free, which is good as well, having paid for the one on the flight before. And then there's nothing for a long time, because obviously they dim the lights and they expect you to sleep or watch the free videos. Now, I had to get a headphones set for the videos, and the headphone sets don't work very well, to be terribly honest. I was hearing noise out of one side and not out of the other, but there we are. It was free, I suppose. So I tried to sleep to begin with, and I found that I could not sleep at all. I just couldn't sleep. I tried. I was sat there with my eyes closed, but there was no way that I was going to sleep. So eventually I gave in, and I did watch, a video or two, on the way over. Now, it was very hot. You were not able to move really. I think I got it once for a toilet break, but the problem is that because I was by the window seat, which is good because it gave me a view when I wasn't watching the video, it meant that if I wanted to go anywhere, I had to get up, and there were two other people that had to move out into the aisle for me to get out, and then they had to get up again when I wanted to come in. Nightmare. And it just went on and on and on. Now, I'm not afraid of flying at all, and the best bits for it, the best bits of flying for me are takeoff, landing and turbulence. Well, we had no turbulence, and we had 7 hours between takeoff and landing, and 5 hours is enough to sort of kill me, really. I discovered on the last States trip. So this 7 hours was really, really hard. And of course that's 7 hours on top of the 24 that we already had. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 hours. So that's nearly 36 then, isn't it? Nearly 36 hours. I had been awake non-stop by the time we landed in Newark, and it was fantastic. The air was clear above Iceland, the air was clear above, all the way through Canada. We come into the States and it's raining. It's not particularly cold, but it is raining. So we touch down, and that's when I get the surprise of coming off the plane and discovering, oh, no customs. I'm free to wander around as I want. So then I have to go to the baggage handling to collect the baggage, my luggage, which is not too bad. There was a little bit of a confusion because their monitors were broken, in terms of what you had was quite a lot actually. You must have had maybe 10 different belts, and alongside each belt there was an electronic sort of display telling you which flights and the numbers of them, and there were about 6 or 7 flights for each of the belts, and of course the one that I wanted was on the electronic screen that was sort of broken. So I ended up walking around for a bit, and then I had to ask somebody, and they showed me, which was fine. And I picked up the luggage, that was no problem. And then I went out of the doors. Now, I wish I'd paid more attention to which terminal I was in, etc., etc. Went out, and there was a little bus lane. I don't think it was the main bus terminal for the airport, and the problem was that the stands had no information. There was no numbers on the buses that were arriving, and I was out of my head by this point. So I thought, look, I'm just going to have to get a taxi. So I got a taxi, and it was $22. Oh my God. To put that into perspective, that is the sort of money that you would expect to pay, maybe to do something in New York, you know, one of the attractions. And to say that we were going less than 5 minutes down the road was an understatement, because this guy, when I gave him the information, and he was, you know, he was white, he was American, there was no language barrier issue there. He just did not know where this hotel was.